Hi everybody, welcome back to Monroe Live. We've been getting quite a number of questions. Some of them overlap each other, and we thought it was a good idea if maybe I read a few off and gave you the answers to the best of my knowledge. So the first question is Ford making a profit on the Mach-E or Lightning? If so, how much will it be making in the near future? Okay, so nobody makes any profit at the beginning of any launch. It usually takes a couple of years to grow the product big enough so that you can see revenue coming in and you can also see profit hitting the bottom line. We're going to be tearing apart the Mach-E shortly, and when we do that, we'll probably take some rough estimates on how much different things cost. And when we're done with that, I'll be able to tell you what it would look like after maybe 80 or 100,000 vehicles. The Lightning, we'll try that out. We'll probably do a very detailed kind of analysis on that. And for that, we'll probably be able to tell you how much, if any, they're going to make in the near future. So the next question is, could you tell us about some notable projects you worked on back in Ford? Okay, so let me put you in the right time frame. I went to work for Ford in 1978. At the time, Ford owned quite a bit of market share, but the Japanese car makers were starting to infiltrate the U.S. market. And Ford, like General Motors and Chrysler, and even American Motors, I think, kind of like didn't think that that was going to be a big deal. They were incorrect. So when I came to Ford Motor Company, my job was to try and figure out how to automate everything. They wanted robots to take the place of all the line workers. When I got there, I told them that I can do some of that, but I definitely can't do all of it because the products haven't been designed to be automatable. That didn't go over well. They were very unhappy about that because they saw that there was Japanese cars coming in and we had a lot of people on the floor, so they wanted to try and get rid of some of the 10% that's associated with 10 or 15%, depending on what time you looked at, of the people on the floor. That's the cost of the vehicle. It's about 10 to 15% for labor. So I started looking at things, and just in a nick of time, for the oil embargo and the Japanese small car infiltration. So the first project that I worked on that kind of worked out was I was taken over to a connecting rod area, and in that area they'd never been able to make product. So I looked at it, and my estimation it had too many parts inside the inventory. They had the great big giant round things that would spit out crankshafts, or sorry, connecting rods, and there was literally hundreds of thousands of them in queue. So I said, yeah, I think I can do something. And they said, good, go ahead. At Ford, the engineers don't usually make, they don't do drawings, or they don't make products anymore for machine tools. So I designed a brand new kind of machine, and then I stripped out all of the accumulators, all these great big giant round things that were full of parts. I did it over Easter weekend, and I used a pneumatic system that they hadn't used before. So there was basically no electrics in it at all. And we got it running over the Easter holiday. So that would be, we started on Thursday night and we ended on Tuesday morning. And it worked really quite well. not initially, someone forgot to turn the air on, but as soon as the air went on, it started moving. A lot of people were very unhappy. The foremen, for sure, were very unhappy because this was something different. On and on and on, everybody was unhappy until the end of the day when we found out that we made more con rods than ever in the history of that plant. So that kind of caught some attention, and a couple of other projects later like that, I moved out of the Windsor engine plant to engine division staff. While I was there, I launched a couple of other engine lines, and then I went on to help design the Vulcan V6, which became very successful, and that went into the Taurus, and the Taurus is what saved Ford Motor Company from going bankrupt. That's kind of like the best ones. The other stories aren't nearly as good. We invented something where you could robotically put a seat together, which was quite difficult. Bags are not something you want to robotize. So anyway, on, and that's what I did, some of the things I did when I was at Ford. What technology or techniques do you think SpaceX and Tesla can leverage from each other that would help their innovations? So Monroe & Associates works on all kinds of different things. We work on aircraft, we work on kids' toys, we work on barbecues, we work on pretty much anything you could imagine. And in each and every situation, we find something, a technique or a technology, that can be transferred into a different industry. We call it technology transfer. And that technology transfer is what SpaceX and Tesla leverage off each other. So there's plenty of things that you can learn from if you're looking at, let's say, the rocket launcher, by looking at a car, and there's lots of things that you can find out about from something like a rocket launcher, and then apply them to a vehicle. So this is it's like an amazing trick. If you look at SpaceX, you'll see lots of arc welding. That's not something that rocket launchers usually see. Normally they're cast and glued and screwed and all kinds of other things, but they don't usually use arc welding. Let me go to the next one. What does Tesla have to do in order to get the new Model Y Hydra casting certified for production? You can, when you put in something like a new material and whatnot, you have to do the testing on that material. Then you go through something called APQP, which in essence is an engineering process that you have to go through, which basically will allow you to tell whether or not there's going to be a problem. After APQP and after you've bought your tools, then what you do is you go through something called PPAP. And what PPAP does is it makes sure that your processes and your machines will stay in the ballpark with the certification process that you've done from an engineering standpoint. Anyone can try anything, and in Tesla's case, they've decided to go with these gigantic die castings, and it works. But anybody else could have done it. There's lots and lots of bits and pieces that are basically made out of casted materials already in the marketplace. Tesla just made one that was quite a bit bigger. Will several automobile regulatory agencies need to conduct tests on the Model Y castings? Which ones? So the main one is called NHTSA, and NHTSA is going to want to crash test your car. And before you can get any kind of a rating, NHTSA will smash up one of your cars and tell you what they like and don't like. The insurance agencies also have a bunch of tests. Now, they're not run by the government, but they definitely want to know what's going to happen if you smash your car. Those are the two main regulatory agencies that would look at the main testing. The other testing that would be out there would be something that the EPA would do. And that EPA testing would tell you basically how many miles you're getting out of whatever your battery pack is. So some of you may have already seen Tesla's Model Y has a 75 kilowatt hour battery, and they get around, I think it's like 230 miles or something along those lines. And then you look at one from maybe, what's their name, Audi, and they have a much bigger battery, and their mileage is much, much lower. So batteries don't really, the size of the battery doesn't really tell you what kind of range you're going to get. The EPA's testing does. On the ID4 battery, with a layout and wiring down the center, would a side impact cause enough deformation in the pack to squeeze the wiring and cause a short? No. 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 There's no chance that anything's going to, you'd have to be hit by a tank. So next one down, any range estimates with a full load or hauling a trailer on an electric F-150 Lightning? Nobody's got that data. I would tell you that if it was fully loaded and you were going up a hill, you can count on less than half the range. So that would be a good estimation. And that would be dependent, of course, on how much did you utilize of the battery pack when you were running your tools or running big lights and things like that. Hi, Sandy. I was wondering about the relevance of 2020-2021 BMW i3 with a larger 42 kilowatt battery in today's market. Kilowatt hour battery. It's a smaller vehicle. It's very light. It may be able to compete. The BMW i3 is not. The BMW i3 doesn't sell because it doesn't look good. So I don't know exactly how to answer that. I'm sure the range will be extended, and BMW doesn't sit on their hands. I wish they'd do something with that styling. It doesn't appeal to the general buying public. Columbia professor Bruce Greenwald says, not a chance. Tesla will dominate the car industry in 20 years. Do you agree or disagree, and why? I'm sorry, I don't know who Professor Greenwald is, but in my estimation right now, Tesla is dominating the car industry. I think that in the very near future, there will be a few other companies that are going to basically challenge them. I think the Chinese will be the biggest competitors to Tesla, because there's so many car companies and there's so much money being pumped into their EV car industry. I think that every other car company will get smaller. I think Tesla will get bigger, and I think that the Chinese will get much bigger, but all the other normal car companies that you see today will get smaller. Why are charging stations such a problem with Tesla competitors? That's because they didn't design their own. It would have been a good idea if some of these folks would have either used Tesla's charging system or invented one on their own. I don't know, but I don't have a real good idea. I just don't think that they're putting their A teams on these kinds of situations. I think that the A teams are still looking at and developing things like ICE vehicles. Should AC output V2V, V2H be available, or at least an option on every? Yes, on every new EV. I believe that vehicle-to-vehicle charging and vehicle-to-house charging should be mandatory. It should be a government thing that comes in and says, you have to do this. This is something that's not that difficult. It means you change the inverter a little bit, turn it into an inverter-converter, and I think that, yes, that should be something. Every once in a while, I will say something that the government should do, and that's one of the things that they should do. What's the next one? What future innovations would Sandy like to see in vehicle manufacturing aside from larger castings and 48-volt wiring? I'd like to see a lot of innovation. I'd like to see, and seeing as you said vehicle manufacturing, I'd like to suggest that we should see VTOLs, and we should see them like now. There's plenty of reasons why we should be flying instead of driving. There's plenty of airspace, that's for sure. Separation is much easier in an airplane or in a VTOL. So that's what I'd really like to see. To go to larger castings, after someone has blazed the trail like Tesla has, it's no big deal. Just find somebody who can give you a big casting, and find somebody who can give you a big casting machine. That's not a big deal. 48-volt wiring, the reason that we don't go to 48-volt wiring is because there's no 48-volt sensors or switches and whatnot. Everything's still at 12 volts. So how can you do it if there's no componentry to buy? How about removing side doors and using rear entry instead? I don't know if I want to crawl in the back end of a car. I'm not sure I know how to answer that question. What's the next one? You mentioned a lot of changes were blocking by, what's this? You mentioned a lot of changes were blocked by old timers. How do you stay agile and protect yourself from becoming an old timer? I try not to die. That's my first option, I guess. But you get old, not because of the number of years you have, but because of the ideas that you decide to hang on to. I don't need a tube-style radio. I'm not going to watch a black and white TV. And yet, there's plenty of guys that think that that's better somehow. I've never been a fan of that. When I was young, I learned how to draft on the board, and I was very good at it. I was very fast, and I made a lot of money drawing lines. As soon as CAD came in, I knew that that was over. And I trained myself on CAD, and in fact, I was the chief engineer at a place called Valiant Machine Tool, and I brought in the first CAD machines that anybody had ever seen. And quite frankly, I had, a couple of old timers that jumped on it and thought it was great. Had quite a number more saying that they wouldn't give up their pencil. And I had some young guys that were really excited about it, and some young guys who were afraid they were going to get electrocuted. Mental age has nothing to do with chronological age. When will legacy automakers make their own GigaPress to compete with Tesla? Boy, if I was a legacy automaker, it'd be a really tough choice for me to dump billions of dollars worth of equipment in order to go in and do big castings like that thing. That's a very difficult, especially if you don't have a big pot of money in back you. One of the things that Tesla's got that nobody else has got, or very few other companies have, is gigantic amounts of investment cash. They have a lot of cash that they can throw at things like the GigaPress. That's why when I read that other professor there that said he doesn't think that Tesla will be able to be a big company in the future, I don't think he understands money. What percentage of EVs do you think will be Chinese made and imported 10 years from now? Well, in 10 years, the Japanese took over 50% of the market share from their from the local companies, so that would be GM, Ford, and Chrysler. My guess is that it won't be quite as significant as that, but it'll be pretty close. Will America ever be able to compete with the impending Chinese EV onslaught if legacy manufacturers don't re-gear their supply manufacturing toward an electric future? When we talked about the old timers, And I said it doesn't have much to do with your age, your chronological age. It has more about your mental age. When you have strongly held rules and regulations, it's very, very, very difficult to move away from what you know to something that you're afraid of. I think that's where a lot of big legacy manufacturers are right now. They don't understand the new rules. They don't understand the new technology. Or let me rephrase it. They may understand it, but inside their brains, they say, this is too scary. I don't want to do it. And so I believe that there's going to be a number of them go away. A good example is one that I just heard of. There was an article that was presented by SAE. Lindsay Brooke wrote that article, and it's a feature. I'm in it. And in there it says that one of the Ford engineers asked his management why they don't use Monroe, and what came back was, we can do it ourselves, and we don't need those guys. That kind of slows down. That slows down the knowledge rate that you can acquire, and anybody that is really in competition with Tesla is snapping up as much information as they can get from any source that they can get it. Money is no object, it's speed. Time is everything. Time is everything. You can't buy a second back with $1 billion. Time is everything. So I think that legacy manufacturers need to think about the amount of time that they need in order to get re-geared. And I think the supply community is pretty much in the same boat. What about redundancy of ECUs? Why? Are there any ways in which one or more of the ECUs can take over if one ECU fails? Every time you put in a box like that, it's kind of expensive. Each one of the ECUs has limp home features, or they'll have corrective actions that can happen. In the case of Tesla, with their basically what do they call that? Circuit breaker type fuses. They don't really need to have any redundancy. What they can do is the breaker will fail. The information will go OTA to a technician at Tesla. The Tesla technician will figure out what's wrong, and then the Tesla technician will make the correction and reset the breaker. So I don't see any reason why I should have ECUs like redundant ECUs. Even in aircraft, we have many things that don't have redundancy, double redundancy. A lot of debate on the side loading of the Cybertruck and how it won't be practical for contractors. What are your thoughts? The Cybertruck, I don't think, is made for contractors. I think that that's the kind of thing, that would be like buying an SUV and calling it your truck for being a contractor. I help build houses and do a lot of that kind of stuff. I wanted a pickup truck. That's the F-150. The Lightning is that's for contractors, and I think that the Lightning did a good job. Everything I'd ever want as a contractor is sitting right there. Don't have to drag along a compressor. I don't have to drag along a generator. Everything can be plugged in. Nah, I like. If I was a contractor, that would be the truck I'd buy. Is your team going to purchase and tear down an F-150 Lightning? Yes, I mentioned that before, and that'll be a fairly detailed analysis. What do you think of Ford's mainstream EV truck strategy versus GM's EV high-end truck strategy? Ford's F-150 Lightning is priced from $40 to $90, and the Hummer goes from $80 to $130. I've already addressed this like a couple, 3 times. I have no idea why anyone would stick the Hummer out there and try and think that somehow they're going to compete with an F-150. If I had one piece of advice to give to Mary Barra, it would be take the Silverado and well, actually two things. Number one would be buy an F-150 Lightning, analyze the daylights out of it, and then try and figure out how you can reverse engineer the Silverado. And if you don't have time or money, because that costs a lot of money, I came from Ford, I know exactly how much it costs to assess a car or a truck. And that's why I'm in business, because in essence, we work it out so that it takes, I don't know, we have to sell 6 or 8 reports in order to get our money back. And we do it cheaper and faster than any OEM can do. That's from a costing and everything else standpoint. Doing it internally at Ford would be probably, or sorry, at GM would probably be, it would take about a year, and it would cost about around $2 million. And that's too late. We do it a lot faster and a whole lot cheaper. So anyway, that's enough questions, I think. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon, hopefully soon, with the first teardowns on the Mach-E. So thanks again. Have a great day. Bye.
Did Zach prep you on what we want?
Answers.
Yeah.